Are you? I hope you've had a lovely weekend so far. Today, as you were just hearing in the sport, actually, the World Cup starts. Are you excited about it? Maybe, you don't even necessarily have to be a fan of football to get excited about the World Cup, but I think it's fair to say this one has been dogged, hasn't it, with controversy, allegations of human rights abuses, and all sorts of things to talk about the morality of it, the ethics of it. We're going to be discussing that in more detail a little bit later in the programme. I'm also going to be chatting to a woman who left Iran to follow her sporting dream. We're getting the sort of sporting thread, which I'm obviously enjoying, right through this programme this morning. You might be surprised, actually, what sport we're talking about that she's involved in, but she's very much determined to lend her voice to women's freedoms in her homeland of Iraq as well, or Iran as well. We'll be talking about that a little bit later in the programme too. And how do you use an ice cream van to help people with grief? We're going to be talking about that before 10 o'clock on the programme. And you might know this already. Creativity, it does help the soul to soar a little bit, doesn't it? And that is exactly what Luminate does. It's a group of people whose main mission, right, is to help others explore their creative passions, no matter what their age. I'm going to be finding out much more about what that means, and you might even, I don't know, learn something. I'm hoping I will do too after this.
Talking to a lady the other night. She was as nice as she could be. Rap was strong and the mood was right. Wanted to take her home with me. She said she was from Mississippi. I said that's funny, I am too. Said she was born in 1940 and she just turned 32. That's something wrong about your age. This just can't be true. If you was born in 1940, you gotta be more than 32. She said she had two grown-up children. That was on my mind. Said you had a daughter that was 26 and a son 29. Oh, she told me that was strange to me. She's 32 with a son 29. She must have had him when she was 3. That's something wrong about your age. Can't be true. You ought to stop lying about your age. You gotta be more than 32. She might have had a facelift or two to erase the tracks of her tears. There's nothing that a doctor can do to erase all those years. When two people first get together, I know the pressure's bound to mount. The first thing they both should do, they should learn how to count. There's something wrong about your age. This just can't be true. You ought to stop lying about your age. You gotta be more than 32. Well.
To believe it's 10 past 8 on BBC Radio Scotland. It's Connie with you until 10. Here's a question for you, right? How creative would you say you are? You've probably heard this idea that getting the creative juices flowing is great for improving your mental health. You might not know necessarily how to do that. So we thought we'd chat about this morning. Today and this week actually, and on Tuesday, the Scottish organisation Luminate will celebrate its 10th birthday. Its aim is to encourage people to embrace their creativity as they age, which is probably, given the age I feel this morning, this probably could be quite timely. Anne Gallagher is Director of Luminate and joins me in the studio. Morning.
Morning, nice to be here.
And Terry Henderson is part of Wise Guys, a printing and design group in Inverness. Morning, Terry.
Morning, how you doing?
I'm really good, thanks. And I jest about this idea of getting to know sort of how to be more creative. And I think it's a good place to start to get this idea clear in our heads about what we mean by creativity, because it's such a broad word that we use and it flies about all over the place, but it'd be good to get your understanding of what that means.
That's a really interesting question, because you're right. I think often we think quite narrowly. We think maybe it's just about the arts. The arts are really central to what we do, but we're all so creative in so many different elements of our lives. You've just mentioned the Wise Guys looking at printing and design. We work with people who are involved in dance. We work with people who will make things at home, who are crafters. We work with people who write. Many people take part in activities in groups. Many people do things on their own. It's really, really wide-ranging, and it's all about the things that we make in lots of different ways.
Terry, what has creativity been to you?
Well, I think as Anne mentioned, I'm one of the Wise Guys at the Highland Print Studio. And to give you some background to that was started about 10 years ago for men, specifically men over 50, who had absolutely no artistic background. So I ticked every one of these boxes, joined it the week after I retired, didn't have a clue what was involved in printmaking, and 7 years later, some may say, I still don't have a clue what printmaking's about, but it's an amazing place. It's like a little TARDIS in the middle of Inverness, got 4 floors of the most amazing equipment. And the things that people create, you just wouldn't believe. It's amazing and never too late to take it up.
What was the thing that made you sit up and think, right, I need to do something with my time, and what sort of drew you towards this?
Well, I mean, actually, I saw an article in the paper literally about 2 weeks before I retired, and dreading retirement in a way that I needed to fill my days. So I kind of signed up for everything that I saw that thought, all right, I'll give that a go. And then there was an article in the paper about the Highland Print Studio. Honestly, no clue whatsoever what went on there. And then we were just invited to come along one Wednesday morning and introduced to the world of printmaking. So it was just making that giant step, to something that you were completely unfamiliar with. You dreaded it a wee bit, oh, blimey, what have I let myself in for? But once you were through the door and met the other guys, which has got a lot to do with it as well, is, the friendships that have been created after joining something like that. So it's not all about just working, it's about having a cup of tea and a biscuit and a chat. And yeah, as I say, 7 years later, we're still all doing it.
I'm going to ask you more about that in a second, actually, because you're right. I think even listening to you, you can hear the importance of the community aspect to that, Terry. And it clearly shows that at least the marketing for this is working. Terry's all over it at the newspaper. And he's made that conscious choice to say, I see this. I know this is going to be maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm going to go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I meet so many people who've had similar experiences to Terry, and I would encourage everybody who maybe sees something in a local village hall or an advert in the paper, as Terry did, to just go along and have a shot. You might try something and it's not quite the right thing for you, and then a few months later you might find something else. But so many people, like Terry, find something that they get real joy in and real connection to with community, as you've both just been saying. It's really important.
What was that moment for you, and thinking back even 10 years ago, you're celebrating 10 years this week, that you thought, right, there's clearly a need for this here?
Oh my goodness, there have been so many. I mean, and in lots of different contexts. We do a lot of work in care homes as well as in the wider community. And I've seen so many older people in care homes, perhaps living with dementia, perhaps struggling to communicate in different ways, finding that taking part in a creative activity can spark a real joy and encourage that communication with carers and with families and so on. We do a lot of work in Erskine care homes. We have a long-standing relationship with Erskine and artists in residence working there. And, watching a gentleman who was living with dementia who had been a photographer, a very keen photographer when he had been younger, and hadn't really found a way to take part in that as he'd become older and a little bit more frail, and being helped by our artists to create a collage of things that he gathered in the garden, and then begin to photograph that again, to watch the pleasure he got from returning to something that he'd done before and maybe had lost touch with a bit. And that's another thing we see a lot of, that people often get involved in some kind of creative activity when they're younger, and then life takes you down a different route. You get busy at work, you have children, and as you have a bit more time to spare as you get older, I see people finding real pleasure in reconnecting with things they've done when they're younger and maybe have lost sight of a little bit.
You are lucky in the respect that you get to see these things firsthand. So tell us, right, what that feels like and what you see when you see someone connecting with that spark of creativity. What does that do for the soul? Gosh,
so we do a lot of work with Dance Space in Edinburgh. And I'm going to, some of their older dancers, they run a huge programme for older dancers there. And I have watched some of the older dancers, similar experience to Terry, try something that they'd never tried before. Somebody was describing to me recently, walking through the grass market, and somebody handed them a leaflet. They'd never heard of Dance Space. Somebody handed them a leaflet about the classes, and they walked in, and the joy and exuberance on that woman's face when she dances, when she choreographs. She's now making her own work. We've given her a bursary to work with a choreographer. You see a light in people's faces, and a joy and a connection, which is... I feel very privileged in my job, actually, to see that and to connect with people across Scotland in lots of different ways, doing all sorts of different things.
Last week we were talking about this idea of kindness being contagious. Oh, actually, I think it might have been the week before. And even you talking about that and seeing the light on your face when you're talking about that makes me feel lighter. It's lovely. I hope that you're feeling the same way at home listening to Anne speaking. Terry, talk to us then about that community that you mentioned and what you get from the other people that you meet up with. Is it a weekly thing, the Wise Guys, or is it fortnightly?
Well, what happened was it was like a 20-week block of, lessons. You went along every Wednesday morning, got taught different aspects of printmaking, of which there are loads. There's etching, there's screen printing, there's relief printing, there's photogravure, so many things. And yet it came to an end. It's only a 20-week block. And then Alison, who's the director there, who I should mention, and John, the studio manager, they got funding and brought all the Wise Guys from all the different years back to do a particular project. And then that came to an end. And then we just joined the studio. So anybody can join the studio and you can use it any time. But because we were so used to working with each other on a Wednesday morning, and, got used to the chats and the tea and the biscuits and everything, we just said, right, can we just continue coming along on a Wednesday morning? And that's what we've done. So, as I say, some people have been coming for 10 years, some, like me, 7 years. And the Wise Guys, there's been no more Wise Guys since then. But Alison, the director, is trying to get funding to start it all up again. But I really would urge anybody in Inverness that has seen the Highland Print Studio down in the Riverside and wonder what goes on in there. It really is the most accessible place to go in. You should go in. There's always a friendly face. Jan at the front. Come in, have a look around. Even on a Wednesday morning, one of us will take you around. It's really a great place, and really I think it sparks a lot of people. We had a young guy that came in a couple of weeks ago, and he had just wandered past. I think he said he was suffering from a hangover and just kind of staggered in there one morning, and he came back one Wednesday morning. He just loved the place. It just does something to people, when they see what can be produced from all the amazing equipment they've got there.
You're so right, aren't you, about this idea of you see different places maybe close to where you live and you think, oh, I wonder what goes on in there. But you never maybe have the courage or the confidence to think, I'll go through that door and just sort of, you know, and see if that's for me, because you think, well, that's maybe for other people. It doesn't feel as accessible, but it sounds as if that's something that's not necessarily the case for where you are, Terry. But and I know that you're part of the 10-year birthday celebrations. What have you done?
Well, Anne will probably know. Anne approached the Highland Prince studio, Anne.
Yep, that's right. That's almost a year ago now, just as we were planning for the anniversary year.
So Anne approached the Highland Prince studio to see if the Wise Guys would produce a poster to commemorate 10 years of Luminate. So there's 3 of us involved, 3 of the Wise Guys, and very much John and Alison as well, and Jan. So it created quite a bit of controversy at the time. We all had to go off and do our own little bit and then come together and agree between us what was actually going to go on this. It was a hoot. It really was a hoot. And it'll continue to. Every time I see it, I think, oh, blimey, there's that 10 that caused there's an actual 10 in the corner of the poster that you'll know about, Anne. And that caused a lot of issues. That was me trying Indian ink, which is almost uncontrollable. But I made the final cut, and the 10 was actually placed in there, so I was quite delighted. But so that was really good. It was great fun putting it together. The pressure was on us to produce. I think we had to produce 10 by Christmas time, so that Anne could present it to some retiring directors. Am I right, Anne?
That's absolutely right. Our founding trustees were stepping down, and we presented them all with a framed print. And then next Tuesday at our big celebration in the Parliament, we're presenting awards, and all the shortlisted nominees are also going to get a framed print. So the print's been very important to us this year.
Well, listen, thank you very much to both of you for coming in, for sharing your stories. It's been really, really, really enlightening, actually, speaking to both of you. So thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you. It's been great to be here.
Thank you.
Good luck with it all. Anne Gallagher and Terry Henderson there, chatting about the idea of creativity as you get older, what's out there, what's potentially out there for you that you might not know about, and just having that little bit of courage to say, right, I might try something a little bit different. You can find out more about what Luminate are doing on their website. Now, it is 23 minutes after 8. You're listening to Sunday Morning with me, Connie McLaughlin. I'm with you, as always, until 10. And then coming up on BBC Radio Scotland after me, it is the Sunday Show. This morning, with me to tell me more about what's coming up on the programme is Fiona Stockart. Morning.
Good morning to you. How are you this morning?
I'm absolutely fabulous. After hearing that, do you know what I love about this programme?
What do you love? I love it all.
Me too, but in particular, that you get to chat to people who make you walk out the door and think, oh, I'm going to do something
You're
today.
spot on. Absolutely spot on. I know, it's inspiring.
Yeah.
I like that. I like to be inspired. And yes, very inspiring. Well, I'm sorry to start a wee bit of a gloomy note, because it has been a difficult week economically, because Thursday the Chancellor, of course, announced huge tax hikes, swinging spending cuts. But what does it mean for us? So we're going to try and answer some questions, Connie. We've lined up a panel of experts to explain it. And if anyone's got a question that's listening, please fire them our way. You can text us on 80295, or you can tweet us at BBC Radio Scot. We'll put them to our panel, try and get them answered. Also on the show, of course, we can't ignore the World Cup in Qatar.
Why would you want to?
Well, why would you want to?
Well,
but it's got there's an ugly side emerged, hasn't there? Because the beautiful game has been caught up in a very ugly row. LGBTQ plus fans say that it's given the green light to homophobia. Now, just 12 days ago, a World Cup ambassador, former Qatari footballer Khalid Salman, called homosexuality damage in the mind. So we're going to just have a look at the fallout to that. Jack Morley, who does the BBC's brilliant LGBTQ sports podcast, is going to join me for his thoughts on it. So don't miss that. And also, we'll end on a very cheery note, the BAFTA Scotland Awards tonight in Glasgow. Now, we're not going to be in the red carpet. I don't know, my invite seems to have got lost in the post. I don't know if you're issues with Royal Mail.
I'm still waiting on mine.
I don't know. But we're going to be finding out who will be on the red carpet. And there's some amazing Scottish products up for award, including Ncuti Gatwa for sex education, people like that. So we're going to get behind that and find out what's happening tonight. So it's a packed and eclectic, and I'm hoping some inspiring stuff as well, Connie.
I'm sure there will be. Nice to speak to you, Fiona.
And you as always. Take care. Bye-bye.
Fiona Stocker will be here just after 10 o'clock to tell you more about the chat that she was just mentioning there. By the way, we're also talking about the World Cup after 10 or after 9 this morning, about this idea of the morality of it, the ethics of it. It starts this afternoon. Qatar and Ecuador take to the field in the opening game of the tournament. So we'll be chatting more about that later. We're also going to be hearing from another one of your Scottish stories as part of our centenary celebrations of family tales across the generations. But right after this, from the Chicks with
You want me, give me little sugar. If you don't want me, don't leave me on, girl. But if you need me, show me that you love me. And when I'm feeling blue and I want to, there's just one thing that you should do. Just give me some kind of sign, girl. Oh, my baby, to show me that you're mine, girl. Oh, yeah. Just give me some kind of sign, girl. Oh, my darling, to show me that you're mine, girl. All right. If you want me, give me little sweet talk. If you don't want me, don't leave me on, girl. But if you need me, show me that you love me. And when I'm feeling down, wearing a frown, you be there when I look around. And just give me some kind of sign, girl. Oh, my baby, to show me that you're mine, girl. All right. Just give me some kind of sign, girl. Oh, my baby, to show me that you're mine, girl. All right. But just give me some kind of sign, girl. Oh, my baby, to show me that you're mine, girl. Oh, yeah. Just give me some kind of sign, girl. Oh, my darling, to show me that you're mine, girl. All right. Just give me some kind of sign. Sign. Just give me some kind of sign, girl. Oh, my baby.
was formerly the Dixie Chicks. I did not know that there was a bit of a change in the name. Maybe, I don't know, the lineup as well. But cracking song. I hope you're enjoying. Hope you're enjoying that this morning. It's 8:30. You are listening to Sunday Morning with me, Connie McLaughlin, here on BBC Radio Scotland. You can get in touch with us the normal way that you do on Facebook, on Instagram, or on Twitter at BBC Radio Scot. Now, today, in our 100 Years of Scottish Stories slot, Peggy Imla shares the story of her late dad, Donald MacDonald. He grew up on the Hebridean island of South Uist. And at the beginning of the First World War, Donald was enlisted underage into the Cameron Highlanders and found himself on the front line at the age of just 16.
100 Years of Scottish Stories across 2022 on BBC Radio Scotland.
He fought in the First World War from beginning to end and was wounded 3 times. He recalled one time when in charge of a Lewis gun being ordered by an officer to open fire on advancing Germans. This he refused to do several times